Okay, good morning. Hey, today we are going to do something called believable logo mapping, is what NAP refers it to, the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, and that's where I got this idea. And I call it displacement mapping, but this is the outcome that we're going to get. We put words on. Oh, you can put it on anything, but I put it on, it's on a burlap sack here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this out of the way. That's the final product that we're going to have. And here's the burlap sack that we're going to use. So the first thing that I want to do is choose an image duplicate. So we're going to come up here and say image duplicate. And we can just call this, we're going to call this map. Okay, so we know what it is, and it's our displacement map. We're going to click OK. Now choose Image, Mode, and we're going to turn this into a grayscale. So I want you to click on Grayscale. And yes, we're going to discard any of the color. So click on Discard. And there we have it. It's now in a black and white. And again, this is our map image. Next, we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And in a previous video, I had it turned up way too high at 20 pixels. I'm going to drop that down just so I get a little bit of blur. I can still see the lines in certain spots. That might look good. So I'm, again, turning mine to about 7.5. With the image that you're using, you may have to play around with this. Again, it's just so you get a little bit of blur, you still see the shadows and the highlights. Click OK. And so the next thing we're going to do is play with levels, and this icon right here is the level. So if I click on this, it's going to bring up this dialog box here, and I'm going to drag my sliders, my brightness slider in slightly, and my shadows slider in. So I want to increase the creases as much as I can, and that looks about good. Just so you know, if you're using the same image, I have it at 88, and I have it at 1. I didn't do anything with the mid-tones. And 170. And now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this image by going Control Shift E to flatten those two images. And now notice I only have one layer, and I'm going to save this as a Photoshop file. So let's go up here to File, Save As. I'm going to change this to Photoshop, which is this one right, let me find it here. It's the top one, Photoshop PSD or PDD, but that's the one I'm going to choose. I'm still going to call it map, save it to my desktop so I know where it is, and click Save. Now let's go back to the original color version, which is right here, and I'm going to click on the Type tool and type in a simple logo right here, and we're going to do that right now. So what I did is I typed in a logo. I want to make this a little larger, so I'm going to double click here, and we're going to actually make this larger. So I want to, again, double click and change this maybe to, let's go to 60 point, see what that does. A little too large, we'll make it smaller. 48 point, looks good. And we can move that around by choosing the Move tool here. And I'm just going to drag it around and let's place it about right there. Okay, so there's my radio station on a burlap sack. And now the next thing we're going to do is actually convert the word or the type text into a smart filter. And smart filters are like way cool in Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come up here and I want to go to Filter, Convert to Smart Filter. And notice what happens when I do that to a little, there'll be a little, this icon will change. Let me just say, and we'll go to Convert to Smart Filters. We'll click Yes, OK, and it gives me a little box down here in the corner that tells me it is now a smart filter. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go to Filter, Distort, and Displace. And that's why I call it displacement mapping, because that's what we made as that other file. So we're going to call it, click on Displace. We want to leave the horizontal lines at 10, the vertical lines at 10, leave the displacement map stretch to fit, and we also want undefined areas as repeat edge pixels. So this is the way it comes out of the box. I leave my defaults on, click OK. We go find that displacement map that we just saved, and mine's here toward the end, and it's called Map PSD. And look what happens to the words. Look at that right in there. It hugs that crease in the burlap sack. Way cool. Okay, so we're kind of liking the look here, but it doesn't look super realistic yet. So we're going to introduce another part of Photoshop, and it's called the Blend If feature, which is super powerful in Photoshop. And to get to that, we are going to go to Choose, up here, Layer, Layer Styles, and we're going to go Blending Options. And that opens up a dialog box that looks like this. And right here where it says Underlying Layer, and that's the one we want to play with, is the underlying layer of the burlap sack. We're going to grab the highlight slider and drag it slowly to the left until we start to see through, and we want it to look old school. We want it to look worn, but not too worn. That, again, this is to taste. If you were to use this photo, I would probably keep that at about, and I rolled mine to about 210, and then click OK, and there you have it. And it looks like a worn burlap sack that used to have a radio station's logo on it. You could also drop the opacity if you wanted to. So I'm going to, as long as I'm on my type tool, I grab the opacity slider and maybe slide it down slightly, not a lot. I'm going to drag mine to 70 and see what that looks like. Pretty cool stuff. So it looks old school, looks worn, looks like something that that is actually tattooed on the side of this burlap sack. Have a great day. Hope that was of interest, and we'll talk to you next time.